From WXXI News, I'm Noelle Evans, filling in for Evan Dawson, and this is Connections. Our connection this hour was made earlier this week when local advocates with the Healthy Kids Initiative and Common Ground Health and New York State United Teachers went to Albany to rally for what they call the right to recess. State Senator James Skoufis is sponsoring a bill that would study recess across the state for grades K through 6 and identify disparities and gaps in access to recess time. Ultimately, the bill aims to ensure that all students have access to meaningful daily play. And yet, we're going to take a second back. In Rochester, a 2022 report from the Healthy Kids Initiative found that access to play can be influenced by factors such as race, income, and neighborhood. And yet, here we go, the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner states that child's play is a fundamental human right. Article 31 of the Convention of the Rights of the Child recognizes the right to rest and leisure, to engage in age-appropriate play and recreational activities, and to participate freely in cultural life and the arts. It also affirms that UN member stations, member stations, that's WXXI, member states, like the U.S., shall respect and promote the right of the child to participate fully in cultural and artistic life, shall recognize and encourage the provision of appropriate equal opportunity for those activities. So this hour, let's talk about it. Why is recess important? And what are lawmakers, advocates, and parents doing to make it more universal? Our guests are going to help us break it down this hour. With me in studio is Mike Bulger, director of the Whole Child Healthy Advocacy with Healthy Kids Coalition. The coalition advocates for policies that advance the health and well-being of children from newborns to age 8 in Rochester and the Finger Lakes region. Thanks for being here, Mike.
Thank you for having me.
And also joining me is Sharon Peck. She is a parent advocate and associate professor of literacy at SUNY Geneseo. Sharon is active in play research and advocacy locally and nationally. She is also a balloon twister, performing artist, and puppeteer and clown. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you.
To start it off, I'm curious, what drew each of you to see play and recess as something worth fighting for and investigating? Sharon, you want to take that?
Play is a part of everything we do. Oh, is it? Play is a part of everything we do. Sorry about that.
We're connected to our mics now. Yes.
Play is, I was very lucky to have been brought up with a culture of play and been surrounded by fabulous educators and influencers that helped me understand the power of children having control over their learning, over what they're doing, and how much they learn from that. So I think it started with me experiencing the power of play and then having opportunities to work with teachers on play and see it with my own. I have two play influencers in my house. I have 12-year-old twin boys who remind me every day the importance of play.
So when you say play influencers, you mean?
Twin boys.
Got it. Okay.
Yes. So if I'm having a bad day, or if let's just pretend I got a little tense, they know it's time to get playful with me and shake me out of it. So they already understand the power of play for adults.
Mm-hmm. Just bring that mic with you, Sharon. I love it. I want to touch on what you had mentioned about play culture. Before I do, though, Mike, what in terms of what got you into seeing play and recess as something worth fighting for and investigating?
Well, I'm here, representing the Healthy Kids Coalition, which is an initiative of Common Ground Health. So we're looking at this through a health lens and the health of kids, their development socially, emotionally, their cognitive development, and their physical health. And when it comes to that, when it comes to kids' health, play is really serious. It's the way that they grow. It's the way that they learn. It's the way that they develop. It's their natural way of doing that. And so recess is a key part of the day for kids when it comes to their health.
Can we expand a little bit more on some of the elements of recess that make it so valuable? I think one thing that stands out to me is that it is a break in the day. It's not just like you had school, now school's done, and here you are off to, have some free time. It is a break.
It's a mental break, number one, from having to focus, having to sit still, having to stay in control. So it allows us to reset that cognitive load so that students can come back refreshed and ready to learn and focus again. It's a physical break because we're asking kids to sit still for very long periods of time and to stay focused. And it's an opportunity for them to have control over self-directed play, so that they, when they are out on that playground or in that play space, they are the ones making the choices. They are the ones interacting with their peers. So it's a physical break, a cognitive break, it's a social break. You were just talking about the power and the importance of social emotional. It's the time when they can figure things out, when they can learn how to joke around, when they can communicate, when they can also have those opportunities through play and talk and interaction to figure out who they are.
Mm-hmm. Mike, any further thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think as an adult, sometimes it's hard to get through the whole day without a break, right?
Fair.
And
Yes.
kids just naturally have shorter attention spans. They're still learning how to sit still. They're still learning how to do all these tough things that we sort of force ourselves to do as adults. I think we could all probably get behind the idea that we all need more breaks and more play and more fun. But for kids, it's really crucial. And it's actually that break is beneficial for them to be able to, perform academically. There's tons of research out there that shows that kids come back from recess with their brains reset, and they're able to complete tasks and able to absorb information better because they just need those breaks. And recess is a tremendous break. It's not just a break from learning. It's, as Sharon said, an opportunity for them to be in control, to choose their activity, and that's really fundamentally important for kids.
Yeah, that self-directed aspect, as you mentioned. Just to make sure we are all on the same page here, because when we talk about recess, we're talking about something that I'm going to go with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention with their definition, which defines recess as a regularly scheduled period within the school day for physical activity and play that is monitored by trained staff or volunteers. Recess is a period of time when students are encouraged to be physically active and engaged with their peers in activities of their choice, as you had mentioned, and all grade levels, kindergarten through 12th grade. But hold on, because in many or most schools, recess ends at, for me, it was 5th grade, but sometimes 6th grade. So I'm wondering, what should the cutoff be?
There shouldn't be one. As Mike was just saying, I worked with college freshmen this year about the importance of play for college students and exactly how much it resets us as adults, and encouraged a lot of play during finals week to say when you get to that burnout point, you need to stop and move and do something to distract and reset that brain. There shouldn't be a cutoff point. My children who are in 7th grade were shocked to find out that you don't get to go outside after lunch in middle school and high school. So there shouldn't be a cutoff, but right now I think the focus is pre-K 6 because of the other developmental pieces that are happening.
Like what?
Like being able to balance, being able to climb a slide, being able to have the coordination, having opportunities to cross the midline so that we can really work on the cognitive, the brain development.
Motor skills.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fine and gross. Yes.
And also those relationship skills, right? It's where kids learn how to persevere and how to negotiate and how to, play nice, right? And they get to explore friends and those sort of social boundaries that don't just come naturally. They have to be learned. And recess is a great place for that to happen. And I think really importantly, it's not happening in every school at the same, to the same standard. And so it might end in 6th grade at one school, it might end in 5th grade at another school. There's guidelines and there might be policies, but they're not always followed uniformly. And I don't think that there's an expectation among educators and administrators that if they move from one district to another or one school to another, that they know what the ball game is, right? And so having clear policies at the state level, I think, would get us farther towards, institutionalizing play. That sounds a little silly, right?
Normalizing.
Normalizing.
Sharon gives a wink. Okay. Yeah. How much time, though? Realistically, can we give to recess in schools, do you think?
Well, go ahead.
That's the challenge, right? And that's why we've seen a reduction in recess across school districts. We've put too much into the school day, right? There's a lot of pressure on schools and teachers to prepare for testing, to meet all sorts of standards, to deliver all sorts of education. And unfortunately, recess has been squeezed out. We're down to 20 minutes in the RCSD wellness policy. I think that 30 minutes would be a goal, a good step forward. But I think that, we need to recognize it as valuable as instructional time. And right now it's sometimes optional.
And I think the other policy piece that you alluded to, Mike, is that in some of our suburban schools, they're getting 30, 40, 45 or more minutes a day. In New Zealand, they're going out 2 or 3 times a day, and they're finding that it really helps with achievement. So I don't think you need a cap, personally.
Mm-hmm. If you're just tuning in, I'm Noelle Evans, filling in for Evan Dawson. This is Connections, and today we're talking about the right to recess. With me in studio is Mike Bulger, Director of Whole Child Healthy Advocacy with Healthy Kids Coalition, and Sharon Peck, Parent Advocate and Associate Professor of Literacy at SUNY Geneseo, also a clown.
Yes.
Professionally?
Yes.
Okay.
I've done it a lot less since I had my children, but being a clown teaches you how to play. Mm-hmm. And it gives you a free license to play, because as soon as people see you, they expect you to be playful and funny. And when you can be playful, it changes the whole dynamic. So we have been offering some wonderful learning series for teachers on playfulness and play, and just how responding with play can help things. So I think everybody should become a clown, or at least, go to clown college.
I did think about it at one point, specifically for corporal mime. But we'll save that for another time. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can call 844-295-TALK. TALK is 8255, toll free. The local number is 585-263-9994. You can also email us at connections@wxxi.org, or comment on the Connections live stream on the WXXI News YouTube channel. Going back to recess, you had mentioned that it's kind of been squeezed out because there's more time for instruction and, preparing for standardized tests. Where did that come from, Mike?
Now, I could be corrected if I get the history wrong, but a lot of it originates from the No Child Left Behind era, and this focus on making sure that kids were meeting certain standards, and that all kids were meeting those standards. And I think it was a well-intentioned effort to, prepare students to progress through their education and be prepared to get out into the world. But it, had the effect of really emphasizing testing and really emphasizing checking in on those standards, which put a lot of pressure on schools to prepare their kids to show that they were doing well. And now you have schools, that might be slipping behind. They might go into receivership. They're under a lot of pressure.
When you say receivership.
Okay. So the state is sort of stepping in, schools that are really struggling, whether it's with, test scores, attendance, and things like that. They are sort of on the hot seat. They've got to show improvement, and they've got to make gains, which puts a lot of pressure on the staff, right? If they are not making gains, the school could be shut down, right? So what happens is, even, you might have a school in a low-income neighborhood. That kid might be coming from a neighborhood where they don't get a lot of outside playtime. Their neighborhood might be unsafe. We had a parent coalition member who was going to join us here, and she wasn't able to make it today, who would have told you a story, a very real story of her child telling her that she didn't feel safe going outside to play in her neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. And that's the case at a few of our schools.
Yeah. So then the school is also then a bastion for these kids, an escape from their neighborhood, a safe space to play, to have, adult supervision and a safe spot to just run around and be a kid. But if that school is then struggling and in receivership and under pressure to raise the test scores, more and more time is devoted to interventions, to instruction, to bring up academics, and that can, put further pressure on recess. And so it's this sad irony that schools in high poverty neighborhoods or under-resourced schools where kids probably need more time to just be kids and feel safe and feel free, that those are the schools across the country that have the lower, numbers when it comes to how many minutes kids get for recess.
Even though that could help so much, as you said. One of the, just personal story, but one of the moments that really struck me in terms of like the power of play was seeing the absence of it for a moment. When I've boomeranged with Rochester so many times, and the time that I came back to take on this role as a reporter here at WX6i News, I was staying with a friend in Market View Heights, and within a few hours of arriving, straight off of the plane, police showed up. They were putting up, crime scene tape because a few houses down, a 19-year-old young man was shot and killed. On the other side of that block, there's a playground. And even when I, take walks around, I haven't really seen that playground used too much. And for the 2 weeks after, I noticed like there weren't any kids outside. And my friend told me like, this is unusual. Usually you can just like hear kids' imaginations just like loud as, the air around them because they would be out playing. And so for that time, that outside time was no longer safe. So I hear you there, Mike, with that. Are there other barriers to recess that we're seeing?
Some of the other barriers, not only because there's so much pressure on teachers and administrators to make those grades, administrators are saying to their teachers, we don't have time for play. I don't want to see play on your schedule. Limit this. So kindergarten teachers are covertly calling things inquiry time instead of play because it's so essential and such an important piece. So administrators are pressuring their teachers not to incorporate playtime. But the other piece that we see a lot, and I know I have experienced as a parent and is a very common story, is that we see kids sitting on the wall watching the other kids play. And we see kids who are being removed from recess due to some infraction. It could be their behavior. It could be their perceived behavior. It could be that they haven't completed a task. So it's frequently being used, or some would say weaponized, as you can't play because you are not cooperating. And a problem with that is, if you talk to any adult today, it didn't change our behavior. And teachers are still fighting. There's a lot of behaviors and a lot of issues. You were just talking about it with social emotional. So it's not solving the problem, whereas more recess, more movement, play, and playful interactions within the learning time and unstructured playtime in recess and other settings would support those behaviors that teachers are really working so hard to work with so much more.
Mm-hmm. We have a note from producer Veronica Volk. In 2007, a survey by the Center on Education Policy found that 5 years after No Child Left Behind was enacted, 62% of elementary schools had increased time for English language arts and/or math, while 44% had reduced time in other subjects, including recess, physical education, and the arts. We also have an email from Sharon. As a volunteer, she says that she wants to give a shout out to the Strong Museum of Play's G2 program, a fantastic program that she says takes place in some of the City of Rochester schools, as well as Greece and East Rochester schools. This program pairs adult volunteers with kindergarten children once a week during the school year for child-directed play.
It's a fabulous program. And
Yeah.
what it does is the child is not in the classroom. They're in a different space. They're with an adult, so they're making a relationship with them. And the other thing that Mike really alluded to is the importance of those relationships, which teachers can't make with all this pressure either. So they are pulled out into different settings where the focus is using play for learning. So it's not pressure. It's playing. And, maybe we'll bring in a little book here. Maybe we'll do this here. But the real focus is on the child. And that's where we were prior to 1997 and the standards movement and everything ramping up, is where there was so much more time for teachers to build relationships, to have more control over curriculum, to be able to bring in these other pieces that now we feel so stressed out or we feel pressure not to have.
It's interesting noting that, with that play being child-directed and yet also essential for learning, that children can also help dictate how they learn.
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. And once we tune into that, I have an after-school literacy clinic in that same neighborhood at the community place, and
Which neighborhood again?
the community place. So it's, I believe you would call it Market Heights neighborhood.
Market
Or is
View
it
Heights,
on-
perhaps, yeah.
it's on Parcells. And so my teachers who are coming to their student teaching and literacy, working with kids after school, it's after school. The kids have had a long day. A lot of the kids maybe don't see themselves as capable as they are because of what they've experienced during the school day. So they have learned that being playful, both just in offering choices. And we have one child who's very motivated by the color red. If you do a red crayon or a red marker, he'll write whatever you want, but not if there's no red. So following leads like that. But we also have a gym space. So we can make learning up and moving and physical. One of their favorite things was finding different multisyllabic words that were hidden around the gym. Using the gym space, using a ball to roll towards the vowel team that you're trying to learn. So there are simple ways that you can build on their ways of learning. Absolutely.
Interesting. We have a call from Sam from Rochester. We can talk a bit more, going back to that suburban versus urban matters when it comes to recess. Sam, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks. I really that comment about kind of the difference in recess access in different districts really made me I'm curious if your guests can talk more about recess as like an equity issue, right? Like, I live in the city, my son goes to school in the city, I also work with students in the city school district, and I know that their access to recess can vary a lot depending on the teacher, the school building they're in, like all those types of things. And then again, once they get older, there is no recess. And I'm curious, like, I want to think about this as an issue of equity, because I think that part of that maybe is wrapped up into the narrative of, the adultification of Black and brown kids and sort of the expectations that we culturally have for kids who are living in the suburbs, who are white perhaps, versus kids who are living in more challenged neighborhoods. And I'm wondering if you guys can talk a little bit more about that piece and how to combat it, I guess.
Thank you so much for calling and bringing up this really important issue. We started the day off talking about the UN Proclamation for Play, and if we see play as a right, not a privilege, it changes the whole dynamic, because if play is not a reward, it's essential to everything that we do. And when we use play as a reward for compliance, it turns something that is a developmental necessity into a privilege, which reinforces that scarcity that they have after school. It reinforces the way they're feeling when they're not successful in school. It reinforces so many of those pieces. You are right in that the research says Black and brown kids, boys who are very active, and Black and brown girls who look older than they are all being removed from play because of, as I said before, perceived behaviors. I'm not denying that there's behaviors and that we need to support our kids, but there are times when kids are being removed from recess when it maybe is because of white gaze or those other pieces, so that we could be much more holistic about supporting children so that everyone can have access to the playtime they need and the supports that they need. Every behavior tells a story, so looking into it that way.
Sorry, when you say white gaze, G-A-Z-E, what do you mean?
I mean that when I, as a privileged white mom, walks by the playground and I see different behaviors, I might judge them differently because of the color of the kids at play.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you were just about to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, a few years ago, Healthy Kids worked with the City of Rochester's school district, Rochester City School District, to update its wellness policy. And within that wellness policy that's, supposed to set guidelines for all the schools in the district, we got, that guaranteed time for play. And we got what I think a very important provision, which is that play can't be taken away as a form of punishment. But the challenge then is making sure that policy is followed throughout the district, right? It's a big district. There's changes in leadership. There's turnover of staff. And when there's no uniform standard across the state around play, when it varies from district to district, when the district struggles to, get policies that are made in central office enacted in all the buildings, then we see that uneven implementation, even within the school district, even within the city. So I think that there's a lot of inequity around play, and it's a great disservice to the schools, but more importantly to the kids. It's play is protective, right? Good play, building solid relationships through play, that protects kids in times of trauma. It helps kids build positive relationships with one another and
Protects
with
them
adults.
from what?
So if a child undergoes some sort of trauma, they're suddenly experiencing food insecurity at home, or they become homeless. Play is a way for them to get some of those feelings out. Kids can't talk about their problems and articulate them as well as some adults, and so play is a way for them to express themselves, things that they might be holding in throughout the rest of the day, because they don't know how to talk about them. It also helps them build friendships and build relationships with adults who are around while they're playing and with other kids. And those can be safe spaces where kids can go to for help or just to share their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I might also add that it helps them develop a sense of risk, because if I know that I shouldn't be jumping off of the top of the slide, or I'm exploring with the different pieces, I find out what my physical abilities are. And I know I can calculate that, and I know whether it's safe for me to do something or not. Without those opportunities, or with shielding them, and another issue that we have is, oh, that's not safe, oh, be careful. All of the times that we do that, we're not allowing children to develop their own healthy sense of risk and safety. So there's physical safety, there's emotional safety, and you're right, those relationships really matter, whether it's with peers, whether it's having an adult that you can go to turn to, and even talking to a teacher on the playground. Instead of, it changes the whole dynamic. Suddenly they become people rather than just a power dynamic.
Sure. Yeah. Something you had said earlier, Mike, regarding relationships, as we had kind of touched on, that I'll call it like the cliff, where you have the recess and then you don't. And when you don't, and you're a tween or a teen, it's not that you're still developing relationships, finding your identity. Those, as I recall, were very difficult years. Can be very difficult years for development, and also in a space where you're interacting with your peers and you're seated. You're either in class, or you're out in the hallways, or you're at lunch, but you're not having recess. I'm curious, with some of what you've looked into, if for either of you, not to be like, and what now are the benefits of play for tweens and teens? But it seems like there's something very specific there that could be addressed.
Sure. So the Healthy Kids Coalition covers kids birth through 8 and
8 years old.
Yeah, So we don't focus a lot on that. And I was an adolescent once, and I don't think I perfected it. So I'm not a complete expert on the benefits, but I can speak to the fact that the research shows that adolescents continue to benefit from recess. That academic performance, that cognitive break is still important at that age. And I think, obviously socially and emotionally, there's a lot going on in those years. So that unstructured time, it's a benefit throughout the lifespan. And there's an expectation, and there's, policies that goes away when kids reach that age, but that doesn't vibe with the research, or with the way that we're built biologically, right? So I think it's, again, doing a disservice to the kids.
Absolutely. And I think it ties into another one of the governor's initiatives with her commitment to recess is the screen time issue. So one of the ways that adolescents are choosing to play more today is sedentary at their computers. They're still getting socialization through online. They're still very loud, I can tell you. They're yelling and screaming into their computers as they're interacting and playing, but it's a very different kind of play. And we need to have spaces for all kinds of play, because they need that physical activity. They need that emotional connection and outcomes. They need that opportunity to be silly. I've been having a ball just listening to to my students as they have friends over. They're working on a documentary. I haven't seen a camera yet, but they're being kids in a way that they get to be as teens and tweens, and it's so important that we have spaces for that. I think we're so lucky that the Strong Museum has play for all ages, right? It has a toddler area, it has interactive areas, it has a pinball arcade. It respects the need for play on all those levels. We have our centers that are wonderful. We're improving the quality of sports and access for city school district kids to be participating, but those pieces are so important.
Mm-hmm. We are going to take a quick break. It's the only break of the hour, and when we come back, we're going to explore more about the right to recess. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can call 844-295-TALK, 8255, toll free. The local number is 585-263-9994. You can also email us at connections@wxxi.org or comment on the Connections live stream on the WXXI News YouTube channel. See you in just a second. This is Connections. I'm Noelle Evans, filling in for Evan Dawson, and this hour we're talking about the right to recess. With me in studio is Mike Bolger. He's the director of Whole Child Health Advocacy with Healthy Kids Coalition, and also Sharon Peck is with us. She's a parent advocate and associate professor of literacy at SUNY Geneseo. We are exploring more about, policy and also, this idea of play not as a luxury but as a need. And we also explored a bit so far about, some of the disparities depending on where you live, what you look like, and what resources you have access to. And so we've talked a bit about the barriers. One of the things I would like to get to is the pandemic's effect on play and recess. A 2021 article that was published in the international peer-reviewed journal Children, and that journal focuses on children's health. They looked at play behaviors in children during the COVID-19 pandemic. I tend to appreciate the amount of anesthesia or whatnot. There's a part of me that has blocked out 2022, yes. To be honest. But we're going to look a little bit more at this element of, how that has shaped children's relationship to play, and also that access to recess, especially during that time. So this study from 2021 looked at different literature and showed a decrease in play behaviors and outdoor activities due to confinement measures across countries to mitigate the spread of the coronavirus. Fair enough. The article goes on that in most countries, restrictive measures prohibited or at least discouraged parents from using playgrounds or outdoor sports, and thus outdoor activities were limited. Those findings were at odds with the World Health Organization's guidelines that children and teens should exercise, and by exercise, we're talking about moderate to high intensity for at least an hour a day. And overall, outdoor play does connect children with nature and makes them more active and curious, while also boosting their immune system and regulating their sleep routines. With recess, as I recall, unless it was a rainy day or the weather was rough, we were outside. And it sounds like from here that is a key element to that break. Mike, do you want to
Yeah, sure.
elaborate?
Recess outside. Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's have fun. Everything's better when you get outside. There's fresh air. You're exposed to, nature. You're able to find worms. That was a big activity for me. That sort of sensory stuff, that exploration. That's incredibly beneficial. I think the tragedy is as the schedule gets more and more crowded in schools, teachers have to choose. Do we do some sort of physical activity inside, or do we get the kids lined up, get their coats on, walk outside to the playground? Then we have less time for them to play before they have to get back in line, walk back to class, take off their stuff, and be ready for the next period of class.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking all right, if we have 20 minutes of time for recess in a school day, is that including line up, everybody, make sure that you're not pushing or shoving, now we're outside, you've got your jackets, all right, time's up, get in line. To me, I'm like, does that mean 5 minutes?
Sometimes kids are only playing for a few minutes of their recess period. Yeah. And it's unfair. It's unfair, and it's a poor choice, right? we wouldn't do that with math. We wouldn't do that with science. We wouldn't take these things away as punishment. We wouldn't say, oh, we only had 4 minutes for math because we got to go do something more important right now. But we're doing that with play. And it's failing to recognize the importance and the vitalness of play for kids. And we want to change that. That's why Sharon and I are here representing the Healthy Kids Coalition. There's
Passionate about it too.
there's we're not at a state of perfection as a society. I don't know if that's like a news break. I don't know if that came across the wire, but we have work to do, right? We're continually evolving our understanding of how best to, support kids. And sometimes we forget about some of the good lessons that we had learned in the past. And now is a time to, go back to play and recognize it for what it is. And I think that coming out
What
of
is it? What do you?
play is serious business. Play is crucial to health. Play is important for kids' development. Play is their natural state of being. And so by understanding that and recognizing it as just as important as them learning math, as them learning science, as them getting good nutrition, we can give it its place in the day and in our approach to giving them math and giving them food and helping them understand, the right way to talk and treat other human beings.
Play is learning. And that's part of the problem why we think of it as something just for little kids or not as important. We really, as a society, haven't valued it the way some other countries have. And it's absolutely essential. It's how we learn best. It's how at every age level. Can I go back to what you were starting to say, though, about the pandemic? Well, two things. One is I feel very privileged as a parent advocate to be working with Healthy Kids because everything that Healthy Kids does involves parent resident leaders. So the policies that they fight for and the community work that they develop and the surveys that they put out, it's all about bringing in family, community, understanding what the needs are in our community and what those family members want. So everything, the reason I'm here is because I'm a parent. Everything that they do involves parent leaders to make sure that they're not just off creating policy, with the Ivy Tower idea. But go ahead.
Oh, I'm just thinking, if somebody's listening in and they're thinking, whoa, but wait, how could we be talking about recess when you've got so many students not hitting basic academic milestones? And I know we've touched on this, that it sounds like without that break, how are you possibly going to be able to take in more information and connect those dots and things like that? So I'm just curious to that point of, is there a way to integrate play into the classroom too?
There absolutely is. And I'm going to go back real quick and say absolutely. What Mike was talking about being outside in all weather and the importance of being outside is also screens off. No LED lights. It's that whole sensory experience of experiencing nature. So there are so many really easy, inexpensive, simple ways to start to bring play in and to integrate it into the whole school day or the classroom day or just mathematics or just literacy, because it's really easy to do. And it starts with providing teachers with the license to have a playful attitude and to recognize, when you were talking about the power of just choice or the power of choosing what materials I use, there are very simple small pieces, I call them microdoses of play, that you can begin to interact with because they're so powerful. So allowing a child to roll a die to see which problem we're going to do next, you've just given them power, you've given them control, you've tied them in, you've given them some more agency over the situation. There are small pieces that we can do, and then there are much, much bigger with embodying, acting it out, role-playing, so that we can experience these different ideas.
And the Healthy Kids Coalition, we advocate for policy changes and system changes, but we recognize that, you can make a policy, but if an educator doesn't know how to implement it or wants some help there, that they need sometimes some trainings or some, co-learning with an exchange of ideas with other teachers. So we have supported some professional development series for RCSC educators around playful learning. We're planning for August our next Playful Learning Summit, which is a little conference that's going to be at the Memorial Art Gallery. And it's an incredible opportunity. Hundreds of educators and administrators and community members and parents get together and focus on how can we integrate play into our kids' learning experiences.
Mm-hmm. That is August 20th. Members and other teachers from other districts as well. Mm-hmm. And it's a wonderful opportunity for us to provide support on play at every different developmental level, play, outdoor play, recess, all of the important pieces.
Mm-hmm. Something you had mentioned about, outside play in all weather. We can get some pretty harsh winters in Rochester, and that requires having the right outdoor gear, and that requires having the resources because that costs money. And so it sounds like there's an equity element to addressing that too, when it comes to that particular element as well.
There is. And, many schools in our region are practicing a community schools model. And what that is there's the school, but there's all these different organizations pushing in and connected to the school to support them in different ways. So Healthy Kids can be there to help, teachers learn about playful learning or healthy celebrations and good nutrition in classrooms and physical activity and things like that. And there might be another organization like The Strong working directly with kids, and others as well providing some of those basic needs, having clothing cupboards or pantries within the school so that if a kid comes to school without the proper outdoor gear, that they can, be connected to that kind of support. So it's a very real thing. We have a lot of people who have a lot of needs, right, in our community, not just access to play. And it's about thinking about the whole kid. What can we do to support them, and recognizing that no one organization, no one school, and no one teacher, and no one family has to do this alone. No one can really do it alone. We have to think about all of the needs of the child and work together to address those.
Mm-hmm. And I would say we're very lucky here in Rochester to have so many organizations working together to provide those. I know a lot of teachers who they'll say, okay, as you're cleaning out your closets, we're looking for 3T, 4T clothing, and they're collecting things and they're keeping clothes there. They're keeping winter coats, or they're taking them home and washing them themselves. So there are ways to get that gear, but it's just so important for them to have that experience of experiencing snow for the first time, or recognizing for themselves, instead of just running to the bus stop or other places, just what we can do outside.
Mm-hmm. I remember, I think, one of my first recesses where there was snow and everybody had to get their snow overalls on and off we went. And having that opportunity, as you had mentioned about sensory elements of play, that aspect of it. Yeah. We do have a caller, Bob from Brighton, calling about Museum of Play funding. Bob, welcome to the program.
Thank you, and thank your guests for being so, pardon the expression, playful. And thanks for XXI and Connections for doing this. I just applaud XXI and the two of you who are so into play, and the museum, a national museum. And the big thing I want to say is, anyone listening, get in touch with whoever you can locally to educate, and secondly, to deal with and confront the federal defunding of XXI and Strong. And it's outrageous what's going on, and we need both Connections, all of XXI, and all you're doing in play to get the support it needs. So thank you, and everyone who's listening, don't be quiet. Stand up. Advocate.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate you calling in.
It's a really good point. Our partners at WXXI do wonderful work with connecting play with public media and public broadcast
and you're
programming.
talking
How about downstairs?
Yeah, well, actually upstairs. Our education department,
yes.
Separate from our newsroom. But yes, fabulous people. They do wonderful work. I do
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're out there at every different community event and just trying to support families and bringing play into the home and connecting it to content and helping them see what's available.
We've got a couple more minutes here to continue to explore my favorite topic, honestly. And I do want to bring up something from the Brookings Institute, which is a nonpartisan nonprofit in D.C. that conducts research on policy. And according to the Institute, recess, it became a staple in the U.S. around like the 20th century. However, sounds like it was dated back to the 17th century, and an English school teacher, John Brinsley, has been credited often for creating that break period for students that we know today. But according to the Institute, that recess is shaped by the progressive era, child studies movements. We're talking about the early 20th century, but also modeled after factory work breaks, and yet also essential for teaching social skills, balancing the school day, things that we have already elaborated on. And in this article, they say, inequities surrounding recess also persist into adulthood. Recess is disproportionately withheld from poor urban and minority children due to academic interventions, punishment for incomplete schoolwork, or a lack of safe play spaces. This undervaluing of breaks from classrooms to factory floors reveals a shared cultural problem, prioritizing output over well-being. This is an article from the Brookings Institute. The authors were Karen Ali and Kathy Hirsch-Pasek.
She's a fantastic play advocate.
Great. Okay. Wonderful. So it sounds like there's an argument to be had that recess and our relationship to play and playful breaks does relate to larger cultural and societal values.
If we want everyone to make good choices, to be good citizens, to recognize the control and the agency they have over their own situations, we can't constantly take away all of the choices. So being outside in recess, having that break that supports so many different aspects of development, it gives them opportunities for autonomy, for self-regulation, for understanding how they respond and interact in different situations. So if we are controlling everything they're doing during the school day, we're withholding recess, and we're seeing that as it's the age-old problem. As they get older, restrictions get tighter and tighter and tighter. And then we are upset when teenagers want to be loud or have fun because they've been so heavily restricted. So it absolutely ties into growth, adolescence, just the importance for that self-regulation and autonomy.
And I think it's a really interesting way to think about it, looking at it as like our whole culture, right? Even as you get older and you're working on a factory floor, as you were mentioning, right? What is the importance of breaks for all of us? What is the importance of play for all of us? Do we have to act like adults all the time? Or can we let loose and regain some of that childhood fun, right? I think a lot of people probably listening right now are maybe commuting to or from a work meeting or, running some errand. If we all just like took a moment to take a deep breath, relax, allow ourselves to recognize something silly, maybe do something a little silly, safe if you're driving, but silly, and I think we would all feel a little refreshed and reset. And then maybe we could all, look at what our schools are doing and make sure that our kids are getting that same sort of break throughout the day, a bigger break because they're kids. So looking at what's your school wellness policy, is it being followed at your kid's school? Who do I talk to if it's not? Do I need to go to the administrator? Do I need to go to the school board? Do I need to talk to my state representatives? Do I need to talk to federal representatives? We need to make sure that we have the policies in place and that the schools have the resource and the breathing space to implement policies that give kids a break and let them play.
Mm-hmm. At the beginning of the hour, Sharon, you had talked about as you were growing up, you were steeped in the culture of play. Mm-hmm. Can you explain a bit more what you meant by that? Or what that is? The glasses come off. Okay.
These are fabulous questions. I really appreciate the opportunity to think through these things. And I was thinking about, as Mike was talking, there's a wonderful book that I have really been enjoying called The Fun Habit by Michael Rutger. And he encourages adults to take the time to recognize that we're always racing for the next level of the video game or the next high. And instead of doing those little pieces, the taking the time to laugh, the taking the time to be a little more playful, so that if we can create a list of the things that do bring us that joy and bring us back to that reset place, and then we have maybe a picture up in the office that reminds us of that. We can have all these little reset cues to support us as adults, and then it supports us. Let's face it, Mike and I are parents. It's not always easy, but it helps us reset too and remember that we're dealing with people. Children are little people, and they're fantastic and amazing. And if we respond without remembering that, we're not doing any of us justice.
Sounds like play is very important for being able to show up for each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are coming to the end of the hour, and I want to make sure that we have enough time to, share some of these, final thoughts that you all might have, as we've explored so much about the right to recess, the power of play, seeing play as a human right, not just something for leisure or a privilege. But yeah, any final thoughts as we wrap up here?
I just invite everybody to go to healthykids.org, learn more about what we're doing, and join us in this movement.
There's a lot of resources there. And just remember that play is learning. It is not a four-letter word.
Said by a true clown. This is WXXI News. I'm Noelle Evans. I'm sitting in for Evan Dawson. This is Connections. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday. We will see you back here next week.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.